Main Director of Abrdn. Good morning, James.
Hi, good morning.
What do you think about the position of central banks in this moment? European Central Bank hiking the rates 75 points, and now thinking Federal Reserve the possibility to have 100 hike interest rates. Do you think that this is the correct way to delete the inflation?
It's not a comfortable place to be in, but yes, I do believe that this idea of front loading is the least worst policy option for central banks. I think the mistakes, some commentators describing this hawkishness as a policy error. I really would characterize the prior policy as the error, holding on to low rates, zero rates, negative rates, and QE for far too long, not just post-pandemic, but in general over the last 10 years. That's set the conditions for this inflation, and now that it's broken out, the central banks who target price stability really have no choice, and creating a recession is really an inevitable consequence. But if we learned a lesson from the 70s, it was very much that the worst possible outcome is to allow inflation to become self-fulfilling in an unchecked fashion. So it's not a comfortable place, but I think these policy steps are the right ones.
Do you think that 100 points hike for the Federal Reserve could be an option the next week, or could be only a message for a lot of investors that said Federal Reserve could be more aggressive?
It's difficult, isn't it? Obviously, the Fed is in blackout, and we've had this very strong-looking CPI number, particularly obviously on the core measure. Although headline was higher than expected, it was still lower on a year-on-year basis than the prior month, and I think energy effects will continue to drag headline lower, but the core did look somewhat concerningly strong. But we don't have really any guidance from the Fed. They really have pushed back a little bit on the idea of 100 basis point hikes in the past, but they have left themselves the option to do so. And the Wall Street Journal article from Nick Taramos, who's the current Fed watcher, suggested the hike would be at least 75, which suggests 100 is on the table. On balance, I still think they will go for 75. The reason being that if they did hike by 100, it would allow the market to price that possibility for the next few meetings, and the move that we would see higher in the front end, I think, would be concerningly large when we are still expecting that we're around the process of inflation peaking.
Do you think that inflation could be most persistent than Federal Reserve, European Central Bank are thinking could be to be persistent until the spring of 2023?
I mean, yes is the short answer. I think one of the problems that we have is just how complicated and how poorly understood the inflation dynamic, the inflation phenomenon is. We can see that in the dispersion of forecasts and the range of results relative to expectations, you know, in this prior 12-month period. We don't understand inflation well enough to have solid forecasts, and absolutely there is a potential for certainly some of these stickier price elements to continue rising for longer than expected. The secular arguments for higher inflation, I don't think they will play out over this time horizon. It could well be that in 2024 we settle at a rate of inflation which is higher than we've been used to, but just because of the base effects, because of the dominance of energy and commodity prices in the inflation we've seen so far, I do think we're going to see headline come down considerably next year. The steady state may well be higher in the future, but I think we have to be open-minded about the fact that we can't be too certain because it's such a complicated dynamic.
Thank you very much for having this time with us, James Athey, Investment Director at Abrdn. Thank you. Good day, good business.